Over a long lifetime, one can remember many significant days and apply them to days of the year. Christmas Day, Easter, Boxing Day, and of course New Year's Day. It was almost 50 years ago, New Year's Day 1964. The place, Madang, on the north coast of Papua-New Guinea. New Year's Day and everything was quiet. The festivities were over. Everybody was sleeping in, except those that had to get up to go to work. There wasn't a car on the road, an aeroplane in the sky, even a dog in the street. That's what it was like on that morning in Madang at the airport in 1964. It was going to be one of those days where you just turned up, opened all the various circuits up, made the contacts, and then just sat back and read a book. Nothing was expected to happen that day. Of course, you'd have to take the weather messages as they came in, type them up, send them away on the teleprinter. But that didn't happen on this morning. This morning became a significant memory in my life, simply because of the quiet. You see, I was scheduled to go on duty at 8 o'clock that morning and actually man the air radio circuit, that is, to talk to the various aircraft flying in our flight information zone. But there wasn't any. It was absolutely quiet, all the way from 033 degrees north of the equator, right down to our southern border, across to the west and across to the east, nothing flying. Then my mate came in, Ken came in, very experienced or radio operator who was to relieve me before I went off duty. And of course, because it was so quiet, I'd get an early mark and he would get an early mark by his relief. This was what was expected. And then the unexpected happened. Out of the loudspeaker on the console came a voice which went like this. Madang, Sierra Bravo, Madang, Foxtrot, Romeo, India. We're taxiing Cicino for Italy. Foxtrot, Romeo, India. To which I responded by just giving the call sign, Foxtrot, Romeo, India, and then just sat back talking to Ken. Now, Ken had officially taken over. I was now off watch. We started to chat away about various things. We'd made a big mistake. We hadn't recorded the actual time that aircraft called. And the fact is, the 10-minute trip from Cicino to Italy, that little Cessna 185 was taxiing out, ready to take off. And of course, he did take off. That's when Ken turned to me and he said, you did hear Foxtrot Romeo India, didn't you? And on the strength of that, my memory and his, the whole life of that person depended. That pilot had his life in our hands. And I said, yes, I did remember. And Ken said, well, he hasn't called his departure. So we called, Foxtrot Romeo India, Madang, do you read? You've heard of the expression, silence is golden? Not when you call an aircraft from the ground and it doesn't answer on the radio. Foxtrot Romeo India, this is Madang on 5498. Do you read? Over. No reply. By then, another space station, way to the northwest, the northeast, I should say, Ravel started a call. Foxtrot, Romeo, India, this is Ravel. Do you read Ravel? Over. And then Moresby, Foxtrot, Romeo, India, this is Port Moresby. Do you read Port Moresby? No reply. And that's when one of the busiest days in my life began. Because then we had to call in the OIC. Then we had to call in the OIC, who became the search master. He then had to notify the airlines. And before you know it, we were busy. DC-3s revving up all over the place, little aircraft, pre-flight briefing, search and rescue room open. It was one of the busiest days in my life. Did we find and save the aircraft pilot? I'll leave that up to you to find out. Perhaps one day when you want to hear the end of the story.